Welcome to another edition of the Ratitude Podcast. I am so excited to welcome, I guess I'll call her my spiritual guide right now, Claudette Anderson of the Truth Method, something that she created like 29 years ago. We're going to hear a little bit about that. But I first met Claudette in the Tony Robbins world. We were platinum partners together in the same year. And then over the years, I have kind of followed her. We ran into each other at different events. And then all of a sudden, mutual friends started talking about how they were working with Claudette in something called Truth. And I go, well, I think I'm a truthful guy, although I do these little boy lies, but I didn't know what that really meant. And about a year or so ago, I reached out and said, Claudette, tell me about this truth thing. And she did. And I go, that's kind of cool. I want to learn some more. And so in today's episode, Claudette's going to tell us a little bit about truth and a little bit about other things. And we'll get to see how her mind developed. That's pretty cool. So Claudette, welcome to the Ratitude Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And part of what you're doing, because you're doing some really cool things in the world. And so would I say what is truth first? Should I just define?
Sure. Tell us what truth is.
Yeah. So some people think truth is my brand or something I came up with. It is not. Truth, I know you've heard that you will know the truth and it will set you free. That's something that a lot of the world has heard, regardless of their religious affiliations or spiritual beliefs. And so the truth is the pure energy of what I would call creation within. And what does it set us free from? Well, we believe a lot of things that are false. Like, for example, I am not good enough, or I never do enough, or I'm not worthy, right? Those are some very common ones. I don't deserve to be loved. I just worked with someone earlier that was her belief. I don't deserve a happy relationship. These are all the lies that we believe and that our ego takes a hold of and kind of beats into us, right? And so when we access truth within, and it's a process to learn because it's not something that we naturally do. It is a natural process. It's just we listen to the ego more than we listen to truth within. And so it's training ourselves to come out of ego and hear that still small voice within us that is guiding us, seeking to guide us at all times. And then the truth leads us into what I call harmony with natural law. And those are the laws of creation. So when we're in harmony with those, our lives just dramatically improve. So that's just a short little thing. So the truth, the eternal truth is within you, and learning how to connect to that, perceive it, understand that is what I do. That's why I call myself a truth facilitator. So yes.
Yeah, and it's been amazing. So I'm actually in the truth process and working with Claudette one-on-one and discovering some interesting things about myself and about life and about others. And it's all stewing in there. And I'm not sure I've really gotten it yet, but I'm working towards it. And Claudette, you've been doing this for 29 years or so, and you started out as a Christian minister. How did that happen?
I was raised in a Christian family, and my grandparents were ministers, and I had a tumultuous childhood and some trauma. And so I just wanted to help people. I became a youth pastor because I felt like when I was going through so much as a child and a teenager, there was no one for me to talk to and that understood what I was going through. So I kind of suffered in silence and became really bitter and angry. I was so angry. It wasn't even funny. And that anger was my protection because I felt like the world was against me, right? And I had to fight for myself. As I started to unwind from that, because I grew up in that Christian background and household, I thought that's what I needed to do because I had kind of left religion and came back to it, right? I said, okay, I need to get my life together. I'm going to start going to church. And at the time, I was dating my soon-to-be husband, He's now a former husband, but so we were saying, let's go to church and figure this out. And so that was how that happened. I just wanted to contribute. My heart is to help as much as possible in a healthy way. So
Yes, you have
that's
a
what led me
beautiful,
into that.
yeah, you have a beautiful heart. And then somehow, like 29 years ago, all of a sudden you went in search of truth. And I know
Yeah.
yesterday you were telling me about some Bible passages. You really know the Bible really well. I'm always impressed with people that do. But then you know other things too. You know other religions, and
Yes.
you tell us about that journey.
Well, I mean, 29 years ago, I was actually led into truth because I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I had
Mm.
cervical cancer. I was like, if God is real, or if this is really real, then I should be able to be healed. That was my attitude. And I was like, I desired to be healed because I cervical cancer, and I had had a dream that I would have my daughter. Okay. So I'm just leading up to kind of what led to truth. And so I was like, okay. And I remember I was on campus at college riding my bike around from one end to the other. And in between those rides on the bike, I would go, okay, heal me. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, just show me how to be healed. I was asking. And it started to come to me the beginning of the strength of our beliefs and how creation works started to come to me. And at first, it was really hard to swallow, right? But over a 4-month period, I began to process and work through how much I hated myself, how much I had not forgiven myself, how hard I was on myself. I mean, who's listening that's hard on themselves, right? This is a natural thing that our ego does. I didn't even know about ego, I knew about nothing. But by month 4.5, I literally had a dream, and it was a dream where I was kicking the cancer out of my body. Like I literally dressed up like an in disguise cancer cell, and I was like, guys, you have to leave. I'm like, time to leave. And they were jumping out as if from an airplane. That's a dream, right? And then a week later, I was guided to go to a church, and I was listening to the song, and they were repeating it to the point it got on my nerves. I didn't tell anyone I'm coming to be healed. I have cancer. I didn't tell anybody. I had my then husband with me and a friend of mine. And I told them, I think I'm going to be healed. Like, because I had had that dream and I had moved into such certainty, right? And I had a vision in church. I just did. It was a full on vision. I was before this brilliant light, and it was golden, it was gorgeous. And what was asked within me is, what do you request? What is your request? And I said, for my womb to be made whole. In that moment, there was a fire that started throughout my body. It was a warmth, and it was so strong. My former husband and friend who were beside me asked if I was okay because they were burning up. I mean, the heat radiating off of me was incredible. I now understand what was taking place chemically in my body. We have atoms in our body, and we have atoms that are responsible for forming our body in the beginning, and they are directed by creation. Okay. And they know how to heal you. And when you move into alignment with that, that's when healing takes place. And it was like this atomic fire, but yet it didn't consume me. And by the end of that church service, I also had a lady, I was told, you're being healed. It's not quite done yet. You're going to get prayed over. Don't say anything. I didn't tell anyone anything. This lady calls me up after and she goes, you're being healed from cancer. Let me finish praying for you. No kidding. And so she actually spoke in a scientific way over me, commanding my cells to go back to harmony and order. And after that was done, my guidance told me cancel surgery. I was supposed to have surgery 2 days later and get tested again. I was told that an opening with my doctor would open up in January, and I could get tested again and there would be no cancer. And that is exactly what happened. It was totally gone. I had not received any treatments since it turned into stage 1, 2, 3, 4. It went from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 during this process and then gone. And, at the time, I operated in a high level of logic and reasoning, right? But I'd begun to understand that there's a higher consciousness that supersedes logic and reasoning. This is the beginning of truth. This was the beginning of me going, there's more. And I don't understand all of it, right? But there's more. If I can be healed from cancer, anything is possible. Because, they say getting healed from cancer is to cut it out or radiate it or whatever, right? I didn't do any of that. Now, I'm not advising anyone. This is not a medical advice conversation. This is a spiritual journey. But after that, I began to really dig deeply into everything. And I begin to understand that the ancient scriptures, the Bible, the Hindu texts, which are the sutras, which actually it's interesting, the sutras match some of the verses in the Bible. And the sutras existed before. And then you can go back into all the different cultures and you can see where the truth is always mentioned. And the truth is always the key to unlocking us from the lower thinking, lower thought processes, and to actually be taught. It feels like you're being taught by the Creator itself, right? And so that's what's so powerful about truth. It's not me telling you what to do. I will share with you what I've discovered, but within your being, you will know. And so it's very important for me. I only work with people who really are ready and who are open to that divine voice within them starting to rise into their consciousness. So I know I kind of answered that a little differently, Robert.
It's okay.
But I wanted to lay the foundation for how this happened. And then I kind of ran away from truth. So in
Well, that's what
2000,
that was really curious. I want to stop you here because you were at church. All of a sudden, it seemed like you're healed by the power of being at that church. And
no, it
then,
was truth, not the church, though.
okay, but the way you described it,
Mm-hmm.
a lady prayed over you
Right,
at church. So how
right.
did you distinguish between church and truth, if you
Because
did?
I was guided to go there. So the biggest thing is follow your guidance because
Okay.
your guidance it will move you into whatever you need to have complete faith. So at the time, my guidance needed to tell me to go to church because that upped my faith, right?
Mm,
And the lady that prayed over me, I'm going to tell you, everyone will be compelled to help you in your journey that needs to be compelled. Like, this is how God works. That which I call God, which is there's only one God, there's one source, there's one energy of creation. So my view of God has expanded, and I can't even define God. It's beyond my mental capacity. So I do my best to define God. But God is the center of all things, all creation. It's that light of existence. It's that energy that is loving, that is expanding and creating everything. And so I just was guided to the perfect scenario where my faith could join with the energy of healing. So I can't credit it to church. I can't credit it to a person. This is the path of truth. We actually can't credit anything outside of us but the divine within. Does that make sense?
So, did you at one time did you believe in kind of like this old guy with a white robe on and maybe a staff and long white hair? And that was the vision of God, kind of standing up in the clouds in heaven. And did you ever think that, or has it always been energy?
Well, I mean, God is energy. God will show up to us in a way that we can interpret it within our imagination, actually. So at first I thought there was a God somewhere, right? But then I always felt this presence with me. And so this is what made me dig because I was going to church, I was a pastor. I started digging into the Bible like nobody's business. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need to understand this, not just do it because I've been told to do it, not just do it because I have a fear of burning in hell, right? I need to do this because I'm falling in love with what the creator is, right? It's like, I'm not going to do anything out of fear. I'm kind of a rebel. Screw fear. I'm not doing anything out of fear. You're not going to make me do anything, right? Like, and if you try to make me do something, now I'll go to truth and go, what should I do? Guide me. But I had to learn that at this past time, 29 years ago, I was the rebel, right? And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But at the same time, I was looking for the truth. And it's where I began to see some gaps. Like, I would read the Bible and it wouldn't make any sense. And then I would ask, like, head pastors or people that were ranked above me, what is your interpretation? And it wouldn't make any sense. And then sometimes I would challenge what we were doing, and the challenge wasn't well received. And I'm like, but if people aren't getting healed, what are we doing? Because I had been healed. I was like, if people are coming to pray for us and they're not getting healed and they're having to come back 15 times over, like over and over for the same thing, it's not working. So I began to challenge the whole system, and I became less popular in the church, and it wasn't until 2000, I was still in the church, but I was miserable. My former husband suffered from depression. We had like this dark cloud in our house. My marriage was not what I thought it would be. I was having to work a lot, be a pastor, be a mother, be, a wife. And I was trying to build a business, and it was taking a lot out of me. And I was in the tub, and I said, you know what? I'm almost tempted to just end it. I was so exhausted and drained and tormented on the inside. Like, I was having to control all these thoughts that were repeating. I had met this lady, and she was a wonderful lady. And she was like, I'll teach you a deeper way to pray. I'd gone through like a healing thing with her that didn't work. And then she said, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. It doesn't work. And I was like, okay. And then she taught me how to kind of connect to God within, right? And that was the beginning. She only worked with me for about 3 months, and then she let me go. She said, you're too traumatized. She said, I've never met someone as traumatized as you. It's not going to work. But the cool thing about that is I had begun to practice feeling truth. And I was like, the very thing that healed me 6 years ago can heal me now. But I don't know how to do it yet, right? Like, I was like, you're going to have to show me. And so that's where the truth really began to unfold. That's where I kind of surrendered and said, show me who I really am, the darkest parts of myself, the best, the whatever, the good, the bad, the ugly. Show me all of it so I can grow. And that was a very interesting process to do alone, because I was doing it alone, but I wasn't alone. I was kind of with truth. And I was starting to get really into the presence, and I started getting more truth and freer and freer. And then I noticed my emotions don't control me anymore. It took a while to overcome anger, because that was my defense system, and truth handled that. But the more truth I got, the more powerful I felt, solid, the less affected I was by outer things. And it wasn't that I was numbing out. It was that I was seeking and getting a higher intelligence and getting a level of understanding of what was happening behind the scenes. And when you have that level of understanding and you still have your power, you can be in grace in the midst of the chaos, right? And I wasn't giving the chaos my energy anymore. And that's part of the truth. It's such a freeing process, and it goes very deep. It goes as deep as you are willing to go, if that makes sense.
You mentioned the word trauma, and we've talked about this before. It's not just trauma in this lifetime. It's what other kind of trauma is there?
Everybody has different beliefs on this, but the proof of coming back and living more than one lifetime is it's prevalent, right? If you start to study it. And like a lot of Christians believe you only live once. And because there's a saying in the Bible, it's appointed unto man once to die. And they're like, you just live once. Well, if you start researching the background of all of this, you'll understand that the early Christian church, before the Romans took over, believed in that you came back more than once. And when I really realized that, I was like, well, what does this appointed unto man wants to die mean? And as I began to dig into that, because I'm just a researcher for this stuff, I'm like, I want to know how the world works. I want to know what's going on, right? I started researching into it's appointed unto man wants to die. It's a death of forgetting. It's not a physical death of the body. And if you're just taking everything literally, you think it's a physical death and that's it. You live once, whatever. No, it's the forgetting of your divinity. It's the forgetting that there's a fractal of the living God in everything, everybody. It is the light that creates all things. And we forget, right? We don't know this. And that is a death. So if you research that in a lot of ancient texts, the Bible, Sumerian texts, different texts like that, Egyptian, Hindu, Islamic, the forgetting is the death. It's likened unto death. And so when I began to understand that, I was like, wow, there's a possibility I've lived more than once. Because I actually had memories. I've been called psychic and all these things, which I don't need a title anymore. I believe when we are awakened to the power, our innate abilities, I believe we go through lifetime after lifetime and then we'll come in more awakened. And in this lifetime, I see energy. I see things. I sometimes can see what's going to happen in the future if someone stays on that path or whatever. And so I was trying to figure out all of these things, right? Like, why am I seeing all these things? What does it mean? And when I realized I've lived more than once, in truth sessions, I began to actually see past lifetimes, very detailed. And I now, after 29 years, come to realize that truth will bring that past life back up because truth wants to heal you from that trauma, because the energy of that evil that has been done to you or that you have done to another is following you through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And we don't realize the effect that it has on us. So I was talking to someone today. I did a beautiful session with somebody just before this call. And I said, we're either under compulsion or guidance. I mean, have you ever acted a certain way and you're like, why did I do that? I don't want to do that. Why did I do that? Right? And you're like, I want to be a good person. Why did I yell at that person? Or I want to be a good person. I don't really want to lie, but I just sat here and lied. Like, what am I doing? And we all go through these things. That's compulsion. And that's telling me that all these belief systems and past memories are actually causing you to do something that maybe consciously you don't want to, but you just feel the compulsion to do it. Well, as you get truth, you get free from that. It's almost like being a slave to the ego for a minute, right? Or thousands of years. But as you get truth, you get free from that. And now it's not compulsion anymore. It's actually guidance based on seeing the deeper things. So when you look at someone and they're being cruel to you, if you go into truth, you actually begin to see their very soul and you see kind of the state that they're in. You don't give your power to it, but you move into grace. And then you maintain your power and their energy can't hit you. It's like their thought wave doesn't go into you. This is all about thought waves, right? This is why we pick up on vibes in a room. We pick up on whatever. There's thought waves moving through the air all the time. And that's really what is influencing us. But as we get truth, we're no longer subject to the negative thought waves, right? And we get rid of the beliefs that are in resonance with them, that are in agreement with negative thought waves. And then the negative thoughts go away. It's almost like they can't keep reoccurring. You'll get to a point where you're really quiet on the inside. And how you are on the outside is how you are on the inside. It's cohesive and coherent. And it's very powerful. It's a really beautiful place to be.
Just kind of a normal person that they're hearing this for the first time, and they're going like, oh, I don't know what this is. Like, what can they do to start the process to access truth or guidance or whatever people might want to call it?
Well, the thing is, there's some universal laws, and one of them is ask and it shall be given, seek and you will find, knock and the door is opened. So ask truth to come into your awareness. See, we do a visualization for this in the Truth Method app. I've done a training that supports people for a year and beyond to practice this, right? And I'm teaching all these foundational things so they have understanding. But for someone that just hears the podcast, my hope is that the flame of truth, the illumination of truth, will ignite in your heart. And so you can say, Spirit of truth, which means energy of truth, please ignite in my heart and start to teach me. All you have to do is ask. Because yes, I can walk you through the process and you'll go faster. You will. But I didn't have anyone helping me. Now it's 29 years later. So if I look back on that, I'm like, it's taken me 29 years to get here. And then I see people practicing truth and they'll catch it within 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? Like I can see tremendous progress if they just persist. And there's breakthroughs that happen and they learn to do it themselves, right? But ask for truth to come into your consciousness. And when you're in a spin of emotion, when we go into emotions, it's really hard to hear truth. And there's a lot of talk and teachings on emotions. I've discovered in truth, and you can agree or not. You don't have to agree with anything I say. I'm not, but I've discovered emotions are actually feedback. That divine spark of God wanted to be in a body, Claudette, and experience all of these things. Yet, emotions don't have to control you. Emotions are feedback. And so if I get angry, upset, offended, feel embarrassed, feel like I'm not good enough, or I can't go talk to this person because they won't like me anyway, a fear, all the fears, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, all of the stuff. If I go into any of that and feel it, I now understand how to process it with truth. And as we process these emotions, eventually we are generally happy. I used to be sad. I wouldn't call myself depressed, but I probably was because I had this really deep sadness and nobody loved me. I wasn't lovable. Everyone was going to leave me. Those are my old beliefs. And so I lived a lonely life, even in the presence of people. I don't experience that now, so that's completely gone. And my emotions don't get triggered, the ones that I would say feel negative in my body. But I'm not saying I'm done, because if something did get triggered, I just know how to go to truth now. So I know what to do within myself. So I would say if you really want to go on a spiritual journey, everything will ultimately lead you to you have to turn within. We can't get fixed by another person. We might temporarily be fixed by another person. We can't 100% believe what another person is saying because it's going to be filtered through their ego and to the degree that they've gotten truth and you don't know, right? Truth is always seeking to rise in everybody, but you don't know where they are. Ultimately, it is you and God within. And that's the journey that you have to go on. That's why in the training of the truth, I'm leading everyone to connect themselves to eventually not need me at all, because it's connecting. You need truth. Claudette's just happens to be your sister that started this a few years earlier. And am I perfect? No. But it's a beautiful transparency for everyone in the group. And we can just say, hey, I went through this the other day, right? And, what do I do? And then we just move into truth. I'm sick. How do I get healed? We move into truth. Truth kind of takes care of everything because you're being taught by God within. And that's the beauty of this whole thing. And then we take a lot of information, science, scriptures, ancient manuscripts, and it's just supporting it. It really is. This does not go against science. If you are a Christian, it does not go against Christianity, but it will blow your mind. If you read the Bible in a certain way and take it literally, it might confuse you. And you'll be very staunch about that. But I would say open your mind and understand the allegorical meanings of it, because the Bible is the blueprint and map to your soul's evolution. So a lot of things have deeper meanings than originally what you thought they did.
And you had mentioned an app.
Mhm.
What is that? How does that work? Where'd that come from? And what does it do for people?
It was an act of love. I received guidance to create it. It's been a lot of work. And I'm getting ready to shift it a little bit because I realized I go deep really fast. And so I'm going to be redoing it. But you can go to Truth Method, download it on the Apple Store or the Android Store. And there's a free section called Seeker. And I think I go a little too deep in there, Robert. I really do. So, I'm just like anyone else, growing and discovering how to share this information in the best way possible. And I started teaching this in 2020. I've rewritten stuff so many times and spent so many hours because I love to get feedback. And if someone says this is confusing, then I'm going to shift it, make it more simple, and remove the confusion. My heart is to serve. So for anyone that wants to go on the app, you can. There's a free section. I haven't even opened it up to be able to purchase the higher levels on the App Store and the Android Store. That will be happening January 15th. So I'm going to open it up. I'm going to start. It goes up to a level of what's called Truth Holder. And in January 15th, it'll be able to be purchased and people will be able to opt into that level. I have a mastery level that is only going to be offered probably two times a year or three times a year. It's advanced teaching. I have woven some of the advanced teachings into the beginning levels, and I'm probably going to remove those. I tend to get excited about this, Robert, because I'm like, oh my God, you can feel better. You can get free. Like this actually works. I was working with a doctor and he had been in therapy 15 years. And keep in mind, I've never marketed this ever. And I've worked with over 5,000 people. It's all been word of mouth. And, if I offer someone a package, like I do coaching packages and the app combinations, and you get a much better rate if you do the app too. Well, the reason I'm doing that, it's not because I want to work for less. It's because I want to incentivize you to study and to really grow and learn and get a good foundation of how this world is working. Like literally, this is creation. It takes manifestation to the next level. And you're becoming a master of your body, of your being, of your emotions, and it's not controlling it through ego. It's getting truth in your consciousness, and then everything just begins to harmonize and be in order. So you can download the app, check it out. If it goes really deep and blows your mind, I would ask you before I redo the seeker part, I would ask you to just say, I'm open to whatever is true, and I throw away whatever isn't, and let your mind be blown, because your mind that gets blown is your ego. And just because your mind's getting blown doesn't mean what you're reading is false, right? So you could just say, open me up to whatever is true, and then I throw away the rest. And, the thing about truth, Robert, is when I start talking to people or do sessions, they'll get like a feeling or, oh no, I have this tight feeling in my chest. They don't understand that that's a belief system being triggered. People think that, oh, I'm getting this weird feeling around this person, they're bad. That's the ego. There's a difference. Like if you get a weird feeling around someone, but you know how to practice truth, you'll actually remove that energy of that feeling. Anyone can do it. And then you'll just have a knowing. And so truth guides you with everybody, because everybody's part of God. Everybody, no one would be living, right? If God wasn't the breath of life in them and literally the light within every molecule, right? And cell, like the foundation, the building blocks of matter. And so understand that, yes, there's good and evil out in the world, but truth begins to teach you about that. And you begin to not be susceptible to that, what we call evil. And that's a really empowering thing.
Yeah. So you healed yourself of cancer,
Well,
and
truth
you've
healed
been
me.
working.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have worked with 5,000 people. Can you give us some examples of other people that maybe you've impacted or truth has impacted, in just as maybe enticements to go to your app and say, okay, I'm going to check into this a little bit.
So on my app, I have some testimonials, but then I think in the resources section, I have 7 pages of testimonials. Like just, I have so many. I just think I put them all line by line. Like, and I still have more, right? And it's because God is God and God works every time. And I don't want you to get hung up on the term God. Like some people go, well, you use the term God, that gives me a cringe. That might be because you've had an experience with a religion or a certain situation that wasn't positive for you. Just think creator. And if you do that, it's just easy for me to say God. And there is only one source of creation. I don't care what religion is built around it, there's only one source of creation. So that's the premise of that. And some of the things, we've had many healings. I had a lady that got a breast lump and it disappeared. I had a man, well, another lady had a heart attack. It's called the Widowmaker heart attack. And she began to do truth. And months later, she had only 48% of her heart functioning. The rest of it had died, basically. And they said the chances of living 5 years after that are only 15%, right? The chances of living the first year after was only 7. But if you survive that, then it's 15. And her heart is functioning at 99% functioning. Like, and she's not on multiple medication. She began to do, she touched base with that universal energy and that truth. I have another lady that had a brain tumor, and she began to work on that, and it just dissolved. I'm trying to think. Chronic bladder infections they went away. Chronic bronchitis and strep throat. I mean, I was walking around with an IV pack. So I had a lot of illnesses as a child because I was in a lot of fear, stress, and anxiety, and experienced some violence. And coming into adulthood, I still had that going on until truth came in and healed me of the trauma. I had one lady diagnosed with COVID, really feeling terrible, right? And she went into truth, and the next day she had no symptoms. And the doctor was like, you're probably going to be down for 2-3 weeks. You might have to be hospitalized. And next day she's breathing fine. So this is on the premise of be it unto you according to what you believe. And that's the law of belief. Whatever you believe will be cast out into the world as a thought form, and it will come back to you in that same way. So if you have fear, you'll get more fear. If you've noticed, if you feel depressed and you focus on it, you're going to get more depressed. If you have a belief that sickness has power over you, it shall. If you start to have a belief that it doesn't, it shall not. We don't understand the world that we're operating in, what is an illusion and what is real. And what seems real is most likely an illusion. And this is what we get into in the truth. But we do it step by step. And the cool thing about it is you can begin to experience it yourself. Because why are you going to listen to me? Right? Why listen to someone else? Start to experience it yourself.
Well, I like listening to you. But in what's next for you, Claudette, in your future? You've got all these things, you've been traveling.
Mhm.
What's next for you? Just heal the whole world, or what's next?
Well, I'm going to be opening up the app for purchase. It's been very controlled in the last year. I think at this point I was looking at my contacts. I think I have over 500 app users now, and it's just been word of mouth. I do live calls, and it's so funny. We'll have 20 people on a call and then five, and then 20 and then five. And, but we record them. And I just had somebody tell me the other day that she had an epiphany and a breakthrough listening to one of the calls. And she said, don't stop. And I've done a lot of calls in the last year. I'm looking at how many calls a week I'm going to do. I'm looking at kind of a self-study portion of the app so I can get it out to the world and people can start working on it with a support call maybe once a week, right? For them to practice getting truth in a Q&A, right? I'm looking at that. I'm going to be writing a few mini books that will be on Amazon. So I'm going to be doing that next. I always just follow the guidance, right? It's like, what do you want me to do next? And my heart is to serve. And like I said, am I perfect? Probably not. Nor do I want to be, right? This is just how it looks to grow, to evolve. And we move out of judging others and condemning ourselves and others, and we move into grace. And we're just constantly seeking truth. So the group that we've formed with Truth is just priceless to me because we can just grow together and we don't judge each other. And I just think that's beautiful. I have a lady that was working with another spiritual person, and she didn't get something, and the lady just reamed her for not getting it. And I was like, nobody needs to condemn anybody. We can't grow beyond our awareness. And this is something I want to touch on before we're done today. Forgiveness is huge. It's very important. But you can't just go, I forgive you, right? And then you hold all the shit in your heart. We have to reach an understanding of what we're all going through. And I call it the darkness period. And people actually, you say they should know what they're doing. The epiphany that I've received that gives me a lot of grace for people, because being in truth, once you get into truth, you kind of see and know stuff. This is why I no longer call myself a psychic, because everybody practicing truth does this now. It's nothing, they'll start, might not do it at first, but you're accessing the mind of God, which knows everything. So you're being shown stuff. So even though I might know something about somebody, I'll turn within and I'll see them out of that thing if it's negative, right? I'll see them having an epiphany of truth so they can be free instead of judging them. And for everyone that's hurt me or offended me, because, over the years, I didn't know how to explain truth. And I had some fear around it myself, explaining it, and I thought people were going to attack me or judge me if I do talk about freely what I can do and what I can see and how I perceive the world. And so it took me years to come out of that. And sometimes when I mentioned it, I was attacked or rejected or whatever, until I began to understand I had a fear of rejection. Remove that and you don't get rejected anymore. I had a fear of abandonment. Remove that, get truth on it. You don't get abandoned anymore. And so I began to unwind out of it and explain it better. And I realized forgiveness is one of the first things we have to do. And we can only forgive truly when we have understanding and we allow ourselves to go to truth and show us the truth about what happened, the other person, our part in it, because we like to blame others. And as long as you blame someone else, you're a victim. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be a victim, right? And so I want you to be a conqueror, more than a conqueror. And so forgiveness is the first step. So I would say if you want to contemplate anything, ask truth to come into your life and give truth permission to teach you. Just say, eternal truth within, I give you permission to teach me. Truth will start to pop up here and there more. And then teach me how to forgive. That's a huge thing, because why? When you don't forgive, your very life force is constricted from flowing through your cells. It causes a myriad of diseases, just like fear, stress, and anxiety. So a lot of our diseases come from, well, most of them, all disease is a distortion. Creation is actually perfect, but we have this illusion of distortion that surrounds us, and we begin to believe that versus the truth behind it, right? And so this is about kind of coming out of the traditional beliefs of the world and starting to see things for what they really are. So contemplate forgiveness, and you might be angry and mad and that type of thing, but that's only harming you, regardless of what the other person did. This was one of the things I had to learn, because I went through some stuff, and I really was angry and hated the people that did these things to me. And I had to process that and forgive. And now they have no power over me. It's just totally, there's no trigger, there's no trauma. I feel great. So it's a really, anyone can heal. Just say, I can heal. Everything is possible. Like, it's shifting out of the pit of despair into what is possible.
If someone wanted to reach you, Claudette, how would they reach you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
They could go, there's a contact form on ClaudetteAnderson.com.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm getting ready to update a lot of stuff over Christmas. So, but
Okay.
that contact form is there. They can reach me. And at that point, I think there's an automation to send a calendar link. It's kind of funny because I have a lot of referrals, and people will, just like Robert, if you know somebody and you want to refer, just join me in on a text, and then I set up a time to talk to somebody. Only do it if you're actually really, like, you're in it to win it, right? Like, you're like, I'm going to figure out what's in me that's holding me back and keeping me captive. And there's a lot of fear around it, but I want you to just freeze the fear and in your imagination, put it in the corner. Fear is not your friend. And a lot of people think fear is a warning. No, it is not. Warnings are knowings. They are not fear. Okay, there's a distinctual difference. And some people talk about, well, do this with your fear. Fear is your motivation. Those are people that haven't conquered fear. In truth, you conquer fear, completely getting rid of it. And I had this demonstration when I was held at gunpoint for 42 minutes. I mean, there's nothing like having a full-on demonstration. And this is when I was, just 3 years in of really doing truth. I had my real estate office robbed, and the poor guy didn't get anything. I mean, I'm just like, what do you want? He wanted a cash register, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, you're robbing the wrong place. But I was just, but I could feel fear trying to come over me, and I was like, no, I'm gonna stay in truth. And I'll finish this story with it was 42 minutes, but while he's trying to find stuff in the office, it was myself, another man, and a client. One of the other man was an agent, and we're all being held in this room, and he had made me duct tape their hands and whatever. I'm sitting there, and I said, what's the truth about this? I said, am I going to die? Right? Like, I was like sitting there going, he could just kill us. And truth was like, nobody's going to die, and he's not even allowed to touch you. And truth said, just stay out of fear, because if you go into the fear, you fuel the darkness with your energy. Stay out of it. Sure. And I was like, okay. And so 3 to 5 minutes later, whatever it was, he's screaming at us, and he looks at me and he goes, shut up. I'm not even allowed to touch you. That came out of his mouth. And when that happened, I was like, well, dang. Okay, truth. Because at that time I was like, is this still real? I had even been healed from cancer, and I'm still asking if it's real. And, because we have doubt until we don't, right? And so when that happened, I was like, okay, I got it. I'm going to trust you. And the truth said something to me about that. I think this is a good thing to maybe end the podcast with. I don't know. You can end it any way you want to. But the truth said, from the outside point of view, he has a gun and it looks like he has the power. But when you move your awareness into truth, the power is within you. And greater is the power that is in you than the power that is in the world. And we only perish for lack of knowledge. And I was like, and so truth said he has a gun, but truth has the power. Because if God is within everyone and you are communicating at a very deep level with God outside of the head communication, then the God in you communicates with the God in them and compels them to fulfill what you believe. And that day, I revoked his legal right to kill anyone. I literally sat there and said, I revoke any legal right I've given you to kill me or these two people. And I proclaim I shall live. And I said, I give you no authority. This is what was going on in my head. And he left us really flustered because I was sitting there praying. He was dropping stuff, shaking. It was pretty incredible. And he left us and killed someone. He is now in prison for life, but he didn't harm us. And there's a whole nother story behind that if you're interested, but that's another time. But the truth is the powerful force within you that as you join in alliance with truth, you start to understand what it is to walk with God.
Thank you very much, Claudette. For our audience listening in, just be on a spiritual journey. If you're ready for truth, go check out the app. Maybe reach out to Claudette. But whatever you're doing, just be on the journey. Don't be standing still. And that's my message to everyone, because we never know when people are going to be ready. You don't even know if you're ready. I think I'm ready for truth, but I haven't really found it yet. I keep working with Claudette because I have hope, belief that I am going to be able to achieve
He actually
the kind
has
of
heard
communications.
truth. He actually has heard truth, and then you go, well, I'm not sure I did. I go, well, what about this? You know, you've heard truth.
Yeah.
You then got
Well, I have. I want to hear it all the time, so I know
right.
exactly what to do.
What Robert's doing is training himself to be consciously aware of it all the time, and that's the journey. So,
Yes, that is the journey.
and that's where we battle our ego, and we rise in authority over the ego versus the ego ruling over us. So that's where Robert is. That's why he's like, I'm not sure. It's coming because it's one of those paths, and it's taken us millions of years, probably thousands of lifetimes to get here, you know. And when truth is presented in front of you, I'm 100% convinced it's time to come out of the darkness. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Claudette, for being here on our podcast, for working with me one-on-one. I appreciate you so much. Happy holidays to you and to everyone. If you like this podcast, like it, subscribe to it, or whatever you're supposed to do so that more people will enjoy our podcast. Thank you very much, Claudette, and thank you, audience. Have a gratitude holiday. Bye for now.
Thank you.